Hey, what's up everyone? This is Ergo Josh, and welcome to my YouTube channel. I had to do the Face ID there for a second, but today I wanted to talk about a few things. It's been a very introspective week for me concerning my art, and so I wanted to do a little gallery tour of my entire Procreate gallery for you guys. This is about 1 to 2 years span of time. It's hard to tell because the dates kind of get messed up on some of the paintings, but I think it's mostly about 1 year ago. I know exactly for this piece, I did this for Halloween last year, so this is around October 21st, and so keep that in mind. It's just about under a year for all of these pieces to be completed. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the upcoming Procreate 5. If you don't know, that's a thing. It's happening. I'm very excited about it. There's a lot of things that I'm very, very excited to use in it when it comes out that I'm going to talk about with these pieces. So let's get started with this scary Halloween girl. This is Sally, my realistic version of Sally from The Nightmare Before Christmas, I believe. And this was done in pencil, and I just, in traditional, pencil and paper, and I would actually go over it with the pencil and Procreate and darken it up a little bit and make it look a little bit nicer. Here's another one I did. I would actually do these on my lunch break and sketch in my notebook. And so this is another example. I remember exactly for this one, somebody actually came up to me and was like, "Oh, do you do this for a living?" And I was just like, "No." It's funny to look at where I'm at today. But yeah, this was in 2017, I know for sure. And I thought it was really interesting that this date, I wonder if it'll even say that. Yeah, so this is December 16th, 2017. So this is a little bit over a year ago. But for some reason, that one said that it was in 2018. But yeah, this is all about late 2017-ish. So, and then it moves up until current day today in 2019. There are a lot more sketches of traditional sketches, but I didn't really bother to clean them up in Procreate. But I eventually started doing sketches in Procreate only. And so I was doing this really hard line method, trying to study all of the details. And I would use the Loomis and Reilly method to kind of help me construct these faces. So I'll show you an example. So you can see here, I started out really, really I have an architecture background, so I was like super focused on exactly what are the proportions. I was trying to find out that secret formula, and draw all the faces perfectly. And it worked, the Reilly method is no joke. All this stuff is legit, with all the circles and the ways to kind of understand the forms. But, the result isn't really that great. And if you looked at these earlier, this was me just tracing over images, trying to study the golden ratio. I was really fascinated with that. I'll show that on the screen. And there's a kind of armature for the face that exists, and I wanted to kind of memorize it by simplifying it and studying it and seeing if it worked across different faces and how it would change as the faces were turned at an angle. So I studied that for a little bit, and it kind of was the beginning of my kind of mask method that I use today. But I would continue to keep sketching, doing these super detailed drawings in Procreate. This one actually took me 5 hours and 30 minutes to do. Let's see, am I on the one that has the video? Yeah. So if I go ahead and show you the time-lapse replay, you'll see that I start out and it's super messy, and I just keep working on it until it eventually looked like the reference. These were really painstaking to do. I think, to be honest, this is pretty sad to take 5 hours to do. This is a special piece. This I actually drew in the car, and I came back and finished it up in Procreate. So I was pretty happy that I was able to do something from my mind at this point using the Loomis and the Reilly method. Here you notice I start shading. And so the story about the initial shading that I did was that I would jump back and forth between a program called Autodesk Sketchbook Pro. And that was because the way the brushes worked was very similar to Procreate, with how they would allow you to get these really smooth tones without too much effort. You can see here, you don't notice my art really doesn't look like this anymore, these super nice milky tones, because it's really difficult to do that in Procreate without getting this weird artifacting in the skin, and it just wouldn't blend properly. So I eventually had to come up with my own brushes and new blending techniques to fix that. But you can see here, this was also done in Sketchbook Pro. And yeah, I really loved that look, but just the way Procreate's brushes work, it's hard to explain. I think Borodante has a video. I'll try to link it up in the card above. And the way the brushes work right now, they kind of don't really mix that well. They're not really intuitive. But because Procreate is going to support Adobe Photoshop brushes, I'm really hopeful that the brush engine is going to be completely revamped, which I know it is. They already told us that the brush engine is new. I don't remember the name, but it's a completely new brush engine. It's got 150 new settings, I think, or total settings now. And I'm super excited to be able to work like how I did in Photoshop, because if you use Procreate and you've come from Photoshop, you'll notice there's a pretty big difference with how the brushes work. Here's another portrait I did in Sketchbook Pro a little bit. I was starting to wean off of that because I just loved how Procreate worked so much more. We can take a quick look at their time-lapse replay here. This is actually, I always duplicate my canvases, so I need to go to the first one. And let's see here. Long videos take a while to start, but you can see how many times I'm drawing the circle to make it perfect. This was such a painful way to draw, but eventually I start doing the Loomis method and I get the proportions pretty spot on with this one. I'm going to show you a few others really quickly here. This was one, I thought I finished it, but I guess I don't have the finished product in Procreate. This is Kurt Cobain. So I did the sketch and tried to render it. I think the beard came out pretty decent for my skill level at the time. This is Mia Matanagi from MIA. I was really into her music at this time. Let's see. This was one of the failed pieces that I did. I really didn't like it. The values were terrible. And I mean, just look at this eye. Like that's just not how eyes work. Like, why would you draw an eye like that and then come so close to realism at the same time? I had a big problem that wasn't even at its like biggest point of mixing different styles together that really didn't fit. And so we get to this kind of era that I'm kind of ashamed to talk about, but it's really important. And this is the era of tracing. So I did a lot of tracing stuff. I traced a lot of my stuff at this point, partially because I was tired of spending so much time drawing. Like I showed you how crazy long, how much time I spent trying to get the anatomy right for stuff. And so I brought this in and I traced it and then I rendered it. Now the rendering skills, you know, you can tell I'm not really color picking the values here because I'm pretty good at being able to render things. But I was just so not interested in drawing it myself because I was tired of spending so much time without getting good results. You know, it was just lazy. But you can see it kind of didn't go away. Sometimes I would trace, sometimes I wouldn't. This one I didn't trace, but it's, you know, again, I was really focusing on getting those super intricate details in, but I didn't finish that one for some reason. Here's another piece that I did. You see, like, look at the hair. Like, look at the hair combined with the way I rendered the face. It's just sad. I don't even know if I traced this one or not. Let's see. So I didn't trace this one. I went back, you know, to my roots drawing it. So I got into this idea of like, sometimes I would trace when it was easier. Sometimes I wouldn't. This one I know for a fact I traced. Let's see, is the finished product here? Yeah, you can see I have the image below it. And then I would take that and then I would render it. Here's another example of what I traced. And then I don't have the rendering here for some reason. I don't know why. But then I rendered it and posted it online. And yeah, I didn't tell people that I traced it. It really wasn't good. Here's another one that I traced. I think I'll have the whole thing on video here. So yeah, the time-lapse replay tells all the secrets, guys. If you don't know if an artist traced it or not, just tell them to go through their Procreate gallery and time-lapse replay. But yeah, I traced it and then I rendered. And I was pretty proud of my rendering skill there, but you know, I eventually would find out that this wasn't fulfilling, but that took a while. Here's some times where I tried to freehand stuff because I was getting, you know, I started realizing that drawing things by yourself is actually fun and really fulfilling. Like this one, for example, I don't know why I did this. I just decided, hey, I want to draw this little family. I mean, this little girl being consoled by one of the doctors. And this one did really well on Instagram. And I kind of surprised myself with how well it turned out. And you can see here, this is when I started getting, serious about studying, because I didn't want to trace all the time, but I didn't want to spend 5 hours drawing the sketch. Here's another one, tracing, trying to combine, the Reilly method, find it, and then combine the golden ratio, trying to find a way to get my mind to understand the face better, which is something that I struggled with all the way up until now. Here's another example of a drawing that, this was a commission, and it was a drawing that I didn't trace in the beginning, but I ended up not liking it, I believe. And then I ended up tracing it at the end. Oh, I traced it from the beginning. Well, yeah. So this was an example of me tracing something more because I didn't have as much passion for it, and I wasn't, I really wanted to get it done quickly. I wanted to get it over with really quickly. Here's another example of a piece. This is a weird thing. I didn't trace it, but then I eventually did to kind of match the proportions because I didn't like them and I couldn't figure out how to get it right. That's something I'm not really too upset about because I do think you can learn from that. Here's an example of me just trying something out without tracing. This one is Emma Watson. I don't think I traced this one. Yeah, I did this one by myself. You can see here I was pretty good at this point, but then the anatomy started to kind of fail. But I kept going and I was pretty happy with it. Here's some more examples of me. I don't think I traced this. It's really hard for me to remember. Yeah, here's another example. So you can see I'm not that terrible of a person. I would kind of mix in tracing here and there. But this is a comedian on Instagram. She liked that picture. This is another one. This was, every now and then you accidentally draw something and it's perfect. I'm still really happy with this. Like to today, I don't always draw things this successfully. I got the anatomy on point, the head perspective on point, the details are there. I don't know why I didn't color it fully, but sometimes you just hit it right on the head. This is Scarlett Johansson. I finally remember the name. I don't know why. I didn't really like this one that much. This was a clip. This was a screenshot from Ghost in the Shell, anime and a film that I really, really like. Here's another piece. Just a random Pinterest drawing. Wasn't too happy with the perspective and stuff there. This one was really bad perspective-wise, but it was so wild that everyone really liked it. Again, if you haven't noticed all this whole time, I don't really color because I had never, I had done a little bit of color stuff in the past, but it was all really, really bad. And I decided that I just wanted to focus on my value work. This is one of my friends, Alan. I really like this one. I always say if I don't know if I sketched it or not, but I was really bad back here. Okay, I didn't trace it. I sketched it myself. Nice. But yeah, you can see it turned out pretty well, and really happy with it, really happy with the rendering here. So this is kind of this era. There's a lot of things I miss about it. This is another one of my friends, a good friend of mine. She went to high school with me, and she has like a huge cosplay Instagram, but I traced this one again because when I do commissions, it's hard for me to get first off, it's really scary because, you don't want to mess up somebody that but then you also kind of want to get it over with when they start taking too long. And this piece I actually did on a Cintiq for a portion of the time. I used to have a Wacom Cintiq 16 HD. I think it was a Wacom 16 Pro or something. But I sold it because I didn't really end up using it that much. This one is one of my favorites, but I did end up tracing it. It sucks because I really love how it came out, and I feel like I could have done it by myself, but I just traced it, and I was at the point where you can't really tell if I traced it or not. I was getting good enough to where tracing was not so much of a necessity, but rather something for saving time, but I was only cheating myself at this point. Use a random drawing I did. This one was one of a popular YouTuber. I'm pretty sure this one is obvious that I traced it. It's hard to explain, but I mean, look at that. This one I also traced again. This was what do you call it? Lupita Nyong'o. I can't remember if that's her real name or her name in the movie. That's so bad. But I ended up tracing this one too. It's really sad, but you guys know I can draw now. I've done plenty of videos where I just draw and sketch live in front of you guys. But back here, I was just like, oh, I'm tired of the stress of drawing. I just want to trace. And I told myself that I was learning because I was tracing to study form. But when you do that for final drawings, it's really not good. You should be doing it for studies that you don't really post unless you say they're studies. I think I did this one by myself, That's also why I kind of justified it. See, the anatomy there is just messed up. I eventually fixed it a little bit, but it's still pretty bad. But yeah, I would justify it by saying, oh, I sketch sometimes, This was Billie Eilish. I didn't even know about her when I drew this. I just thought it was a really cool picture. I drew this by myself. Really happy with it. This was a random guy at a cafe that asked me to draw him. And he had this really, really sad story about his wife dying and stuff. So I did it, got it over with. This one I drew myself. I was really happy with. This is one of the YouTubers I really like to watch. If you have any sort of mental health issues or deal with anxiety or anything, you should definitely watch her videos. She's fantastic. I think her name is Katie Morrison. I'm actually going to look it up. Okay, her name is Katie Morton, not Katie Morrison. But I'll try and show her channel somewhere. But she really liked this. It's really cool to draw people that matter to you, and they they end up seeing your work and they like it. This one I was also really proud of. I took this into I still had my Cintiq, and I detailed this pretty well. I don't know why I don't have it here, but you can see that I drew this myself. Sometimes I end up doing it and it works. It was really half and half at this point. I would sketch and then I would trace, and I don't really know why. I guess that's just sometimes I felt really lazy at this point. That one was done in Sketchbook Pro a little bit, I think. This one I traced, I remember that for sure. Also, one thing I want to mention is during this whole time, I was very, very heavily invested in my likes on Instagram. Like, YouTube wasn't really that big of a deal for me yet. It was like just this kind of like little thing on the side that I did every month or two. And I didn't really, care about it as much. But when it came to those Instagram likes, I was so like, those were my life. If something did bad, then I would completely reevaluate everything and change everything again. And, it was really unhealthy time for me to let that influence my artwork so much. I don't remember if I drew this one. Yeah, I did this one myself. Pretty happy with it. So this is something that I don't think is bad, and I think that you should do it if you're a beginner. If you draw something, I think you should go ahead and check, It's great to check and see, okay, what did I do wrong? And you learn, okay, my problem here was eyes too big, nose too big. So there. Now when I do my next drawing, I can know, okay, I know what I tend to do, and I'm going to try and fix it before I make that mistake again. And so oftentimes that's a really great way to study. This was another a follower of mine on Instagram. I drew a few followers every now and then. This was another study. You can see I was really getting into the details here, like if I hide the background. Still on that Loomis method, making my own personal adjustments. This one was really nice. I was influenced by another popular account on Instagram. I can't remember the name exactly. Oh, looks like I traced it. Oh well. I don't know why. Because you can tell I didn't even try. Usually when I trace something, I try, and then if it doesn't work, then I just get frustrated and trace it. But with this one, I just went ahead and traced it. Looks like I traced this one too, but this was another follower of mine on Instagram. She actually still is very active on my account, and I made some adjustments. This is another kind of reason that I felt justified to trace a little bit, because I would make edits and I felt confident enough to make my own changes and play with things a little bit. This is one of the pieces I'm the most proud of because I did not trace this, and the detail I was able to achieve on this was just really great. Like, I got this one printed out, and my sister actually has it now. But I'm just so happy with this. I can actually show you the process. And I went through the most grueling construction process for this. Like, I drew the circle, I cut it, I drew a plane in front of her face, I divided that plane into points, and I did the golden ratio with the triangular shapes and everything. That's her handle, Blue Satan on Instagram. But her name is Julia, and it's just, eventually I got to rendering, which was fun, and it looked like the only mistake I made was I made her chin too big. But I was really happy with this piece. But at the same time, and then I brought the picture in because I thought I would try and color it, but that was a failure. But yeah, I was really happy with that piece, but it was just so not fulfilling to do that kind of construction in the beginning, because it felt like, what's the point? So that piece marks a kind of big change, and I started to really focus on spending less time with my work, and I wanted to get faster, and I kind of started dabbling with studying other artists and studying the whole idea of making things more appealing rather than just being realistic. And so I started slowly going towards a more stylized route. So here I learned a little bit of anatomy and started doing these fun little shape drawings, tracings over images. So you can see this one. These are some random pieces I did in high school. I'll show you one of them. This was about this. I can't show you how big it is, but it's about 2 by 2 feet or 2 by 3 feet large. Here's another example, something I traced trying to find the anatomy. These kind of tracings I also completely recommend because they're not done in a way I never really posted these. Well, some of them I did, which is bad, but I never really posted these. I wanted to find the anatomy within the picture. So I'm tracing, but I'm not really tracing to create an image. I'm tracing to study. So for example, this is a 3D model I found online that was really good. I loved the flow and everything. And so I would trace it. And I unfortunately posted this. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm studying anatomy. But it wasn't on my main Ergo Josh account. I had like a second account. You can see there, that was like my initials for my second alias. But I did learn something here, like I was studying how to see forms in a volumetric way, and I knew a little bit of anatomy. I have a rib cage in there, and I was experimenting with perspective at some point. But that's something I did a lot more, you'll see. And then this was another follower of mine. This was me. I was really oh, Gal Gadot has like the perfect face I want to use to like memorize for my base drawings. So I was really studying her face for a little bit. This was a random sketch I did after studying her face, and I was pretty happy with the effect. This was the first time I realized that drawing something and then immediately practicing afterwards yielded really, really good results. Here was a very, very successful example of after I studied Gal Gadot, I went back and I would reconstruct the shapes that I learned, and this drawing did extremely well on Instagram, so I was very, very happy with this sketch. Which, shows that I was still heavily dependent on Instagram for everything. I think this was another follower of mine. And then this picture, I was going to do another trace over for anatomy, but I never got around to it. That's another practice. That's another trace over. This was a commission for one of my friends. I think this one was also traced because I was just, again, the reason already. Here's one I tried to do from memory of one of my bosses from work. This is so bad. Her face is just like a flat sheet of paper. Here's one that I really liked. This was one where I began to learn how to tweak the reference in such a way to make it more stylized and more me. And this was extremely fulfilling to do. I'm going to show you the replay now. working on it, tweaking things, trying to find a face that was, likable. And, I was still adding in the details again, trying to teach myself, but I decided to render it. And it ended up being really successful. So I tried it again, and I was able to come up with this piece, which was perfect. The hand was bad, but the face I was extremely happy with. This was something that everyone really liked, and I was proud to show it off. This was another follower. Back then, I would actually ask people to send me their work, send me their photos so that I could use for my artwork, but I don't do that anymore. So this is a little bit of a phase here where I would do a lot of these photo trace studies. For example, this one, I'm not sure if I trace this one. That one's a duplicated picture. I don't know where the origin is. It's probably further up. But for example, here, so I would start tracing bodies a lot. And so with the bodies, it was the same thing, except it wasn't so much because I was lazy, but I truly was not experienced with bodies. So what I would do is I would trace them, but I would also, begin to get inspired and get a little creative. I would add in anatomy, which is something that is a good thing to do because you can't see the anatomy, but if you know where it is based on the picture, then you're actually training yourself to see anatomy from a photo reference so that you can draw it better. And then I got creative. This was for Mermaid, and I created this whole mermaid, and she's looking at this submarine. She's like a giant, mermaid, and I was really happy with that. So when it comes to these body tracings, again, this was from a 3D model, I believe, or another painting that someone else did. And I loved this stylized body with the stylized face. That was still very realistic. And so I wanted to kind of learn more about how they constructed that. This is a really bad one. This is me. I got pretty good at the neck a little bit. This is me trying to do Motoko Kusanagi. Again, it was traced, but at the end of the day, I was able to add a little bit of flair to it. The hands are different. You can see I drew this over here. She has a gun in her hand. I don't know if I ever finished that. And then she's like in the water where that water scene is. And then here's another one. This is supposed to be Black Widow. It's just really bad. I would just trace something and try my best to make it my own a little bit, which is really bad. But I was trying to study the anatomy as well, but I wasn't really serious about it because none of those things that you see are anatomically correct. Like that rib cage doesn't make sense. Here's another. I did a random painting of Sarah Tepes. I don't know if she had shown her face before, but I was like, oh, she showed her face. Now I know what she looks like. And I was like, oh, I'm going to do a drawing of her. So here's one. I did a few. I think this was a pretty decent attempt at coloring it. This was another random portrait I did. I think I traced this one again because I think this was a follower. I'm not sure. These kind of marked another change here. So I got kind of serious. I was dabbling in this kind of stylized stuff for a little bit, kind of messing around with bodies, but this is when I got serious about learning to draw faces without tracing so much. So none of these are traced. These like little three groupings of drawings you can see here. These are actually, I believe, these were followers of mine. I asked them to send me pictures. So I would draw them from scratch and really study them. I'll show you a few more. This was from Pinterest. So I was really trying my best to develop this style of mine. This one was difficult. This was a follower, but I couldn't get it to look right. I really didn't know too much of what I was doing because I wanted to be stylized, but I was still relying on realism. And a lot of my problem back then was I didn't understand that, some things just take a while to learn. And I didn't need to be perfect at the stylization. It took more time to be able to develop your style for faces, but I was like always just relying on filling anything in with realism, and that kind of created this weird dynamic. And again, during this whole time, I was super, super heavily focused on my likes. So if a piece did badly, it really influenced what I would do later on. I was pretty happy with this one, but now looking back, I can see all these different mistakes. I can see the eyes are crooked, just how ridiculous shading the eye like that is. So many different things like that you can notice when you come back to a piece. Here's another piece. This is an interesting one because this looks traced, doesn't it? Look at those lines. Look how dark and sharp they are. And look how human looking it is. It's not really stylized too much. But if I go ahead and show you the time-lapse replay, you can see I sketched it out myself. All those dirty lines, I eventually cleaned them up. And I eventually got to the point where my sketches looked like I traced the drawing. It was pretty bad. My style was realism, but also this kind of cartoony shell shading style, which just didn't work. Like her face is so flat and bland. There's no suggestion of depth in her skin. Here's another one I did. I know that I sketched this one myself. I was pretty happy with it, but it didn't do that well. And so I kind of gave up on this kind of workflow, which is pretty sad. So that was a commission, and this was a piece I did that I eventually made my icon. This is another super popular Instagram kind of celebrity. And I'm pretty sure I traced this one, but I made it my profile picture and I colored it a little bit. And so I thought this was a pretty good thing, pretty good style that I had going on. So I thought I'd push myself, and I did my first kind of viral piece. And so this one was really unique because what I did was I took a picture of my friend. Then I took a picture of a body and I photoshopped it together to look the way I wanted to. Then I would draw it. And then I color picked from Ross Draws. And that's how I got this aerial drawing. And this did extremely well. This got 4,000 likes back when I had 15,000 followers, and I still can't even get that many likes that often now. So this one did extremely well. So I was like, all right, this is the thing. This is what I'm doing. And I tried again, and this did really bad for a number of reasons, but it was a pretty bad hit to the face. I mean, come on, Josh, what do you expect when you draw your glasses in just a black shape like that? I actually went to an Apple store to do some sketching. I was kind of disappointed with what they had. It was kind of embarrassing too, because I knew more about Procreate than the guy that was there doing the kind of walkthrough. I guess that experience is more geared towards kids, but I really liked the sketch that I did there. I was looking at people and sketching on my iPad like a real artist, Here's another one I did where I was trying to get back on that aerial drawing high. I feel so bad about this. This was a girl that followed me on Instagram, and I turned her into an Oompa Loompa. That's basically what I did. And I don't know why I decided to do that. I thought it was cool. And I didn't even color the hair, just lazy, doing random stuff. This is a whole series of me tracing bodies, tracing photos, trying to learn anatomy. I decided I liked doing that. Now, I posted this on that second account as if I was drawing them, doing my own studies, which was bad. But at the end of the day, I did learn a lot. I was actually looking at the form and drawing these circular ellipses, trying to understand it. And I was also really proud of myself because if you look at the reference, I don't have the reference image. I think I have the reference image somewhere else, but if I can find another example. So this one, for example, if I go to the time-lapse replay, you can see that I start with the picture and I'm like, kawaii anime girl, let me try and draw this. And I took the time to figure out what perspective each of her main body parts were in. So that's an exercise that's actually very valuable to do. Then I would go in and find the basic shapes and the basic anatomical proportions of her torso, her pelvis, and I would try to match those with the perspective. And then I kind of started having fun and detailing it too much. But doing this kind of thing where you stop right around here. Right around here, I would say. This is valuable. And if you were to sit down and do like 10 of these a day, where you have an anatomy reference and then you take this image and you try to transcribe the anatomy onto the image, that's actually really helpful for you to learn and study. So even though all of these are, work that I can't say I did myself, they're just tracings, the original image doesn't have any of these features in it. But if you look at it, I definitely was able to learn to see all of these things that don't exist in the actual photo. And so I was training myself to be able to look for anatomy. And that ended up helping me out a lot in the future. Here's a drawing I did of Kara from Detroit Become Human. Really like this one. This was the first time I kind of got a little bit serious about hair and the hair brushes. This is a drawing I did of a girl from Altered Carbon. I really, really loved that show on Netflix, so I decided I was going to draw her. I thought she had a really interesting face. There's another random sketch I did. Here's another example of where I was beginning to use tracing more as a way to study again. So I traced the anatomy for Gal Gadot here. But if you look at this one, I went ahead and if I do the time-lapse replay, you can see that I drew this from myself. I drew this by myself from scratch. And it was because I just studied her face and her anatomy, and I would look at that and I would draw this, and I was actually extremely successful and it was very accurate. So that's something that I do recommend you do, because I was able to kind of boost my skill temporarily to do something like this. And when you complete a drawing like this, you learn a lot. When you're able to draw something by yourself and it's actually correct. So I do recommend this kind of studying here. But unfortunately, that didn't get much likes. So, I was so driven by likes. So I was like, all right, let me go back to drawing some cute faces here. And this one did well, and I hate it. Now, look at that nose. Why am I turning people into pigs? It's just ridiculous. Here I tried a sad attempt at doing a Ross Draws draw this in your style. So what I did was I traced the basic proportions of this picture, and I was like, ooh, I can make his character Nima into this position and it's going to look great. And so I did that, and then I took those lines and then I made a sketch. It's pretty bad. Even though I took the basic proportions, I still, that angle was very challenging for me. It's not something I'm used to, so I wasn't able to get the eyes or the nose done properly. So even though I did a pretty decent job with the textures and the hair is, interesting, the lighting is terrible, colors are terrible, as I'm terrible with colors, and the anatomy is pretty bad. It's this weird hybrid of realism and, toon stuff that didn't do well. Now here's an example of why I was happy with all of that tracing. So this is an artist on Instagram. She's amazing. Her name is Alexandra, I believe, and she allowed me to use this picture to draw her. And what I did was I traced rectangular cubes of the basic parts of her anatomy, so the pelvis, the torso, and the head. And then I would go ahead and draw her completely. And so if I do a time-lapse replay here, you're going to see that I drew this on my own. I didn't copy and paste what I did on the other drawing. You can see here that I'm drawing this in real time on the white canvas with my own ability. And I eventually, while looking at her as a reference, of course, reconstruct her entire body. And I had some trouble with the face, but it wasn't that bad because I had the body to use to get me grounded. And I was able to detail everything out. And that's something I could have never done before. Now, would I have progressed faster as an artist if I never did all those tracings and did it all by myself? Maybe, maybe not, but that's up for you to decide. I'm just sharing with you my experience. So here's some more random. This is actually kind of the face. She used to be the face of Procreate. She used to be in every single story that Procreate would post, and so I drew her and she really liked it. This was another sorry attempt at drawing a influencer that was often a guest on Just Kidding News. This was a follower of mine, and she submitted an image that I really liked, and so I was actually able to draw her from my mind. And if I go ahead and show you, not from my mind, sorry, from, without tracing, draw her freehand. And so you can see here, I actually sat down and drew her whole body freehand. And I did the rough sketch, and then I started detailing everything out. And I even went as far to draw her shirt, and her shirt looks amazing. I'm really happy with that. I even drew her feet and stuff. So yeah, I pretty happy with how that turned out, and I was able to draw things, whole bodies I had never done before without really struggling so hard. Here's another one that I tried. Didn't do that well on Instagram, so again, my depression. Here's another random portrait I did. Here's another, this is a friend, a coworker. She let me use some of her photos to draw her. I had some fun being creative there. She didn't have all those vines on her, obviously. This was another commission. I wasn't too happy with it because, again, I kind of went back to that fake cell shading technique where I halfway did things. But you can tell there's some glimpses in the hair being nice, but I couldn't, I never really delved fully into it. I just kept the lines there. Here's another kind of set of those practices I did where I would trace the bodies, but I started to go a few steps further. So, for example, for this one, I hopefully have the reference here, and so I do. So if you remember, it's this, if you can remember this, it's this girl crouching down, looking back at the camera, and she's eating something. Looks like corn with chopsticks. But I eventually drew her with a completely different face, and she's eating something else with chopsticks, and I kind of changed her outfit a little bit. So that's like, okay, Josh, not really that impressive, but let's look at this one. So with this one, how I started out was I traced the image, but again, I was looking for that perspective again. I was trying to be like, all right, Josh, if I'm going to trace, I'm going to try to teach myself something. So I was like, all right, I'm going to give her these huge swords inspired by God of War, right? And then I drew her body in, and I was pretty good at estimating, the form. I kind of changed it a little bit just for my own liking. And you can tell that my lines suggest that I do have an understanding of the form that's there because I've been doing this for a little bit. And you can see the ellipses there. I kind of understand how the form is undulating. Somebody who hadn't done any of these practice wouldn't be able to draw a foot inside of a shoe like that without any references. And so here I was again trying to match these swords into the perspective of the drawing, which was extremely difficult to do. And I eventually came up with these clothes to put on her body, So this was traced, but I was very proud of myself for being able to make it my own. And you can tell here, again, a new perspective for me was difficult. And so it's very hesitant, and those lines are all 100% based on the original face, and I wasn't able to stylize it or make it more artistic. Here's another thing that I did. I think this was traced. No, this actually wasn't traced. This was something that I did for fun, just trying to do a sketch, and then I realized, hey, I kind of like it. And so I tried to do a full drawing, but I didn't like it, and I just cropped it in. And she has this pig nose again. I don't know where I was going with that, but I thought it was awesome at the time. This was a very painful drawing. Now, a lot of people don't agree with this kind of thing that I did, but I mean, tracing and posting it in general is already not a good way to start. But what I did here was I found a picture of a girl in cosplaying Mulan, and I found a picture of a woman who I thought would be a good example for Mulan. And so I tried to match the perspective. I tried to move her hands and, Photoshop it out, but it looks pretty weird. So I took that and I tried to create a drawing with her in it. And so I'm going to show you the time-lapse replay of this whole thing. So I ended up not wanting to keep the original picture the way it was. I didn't want to keep her with her armor. I wanted to do the fun Mulan that was in Ralph Breaks the Internet. So in Ralph Breaks the Internet, there was a cool modern looking Mulan. So I ended up wanting to draw her, and it was all going to be this huge concept of her like taking off her bun and being like a warrior and not being this cute woman anymore. But that really doesn't make sense when she's in her casual outfit, you know? So that whole concept was just kind of destroyed. And, you know, I tried my best with the anatomy, tried to make it work. I actually went as far as to post it on Loish's, she has a cool page that helps people get critiques. So I posted it there to get some critiques, and someone actually did a trace over for me. And so I just traced over their trace over and brought it into mine, and then eventually tried to do it. But it just wasn't that great. Tried to color pick from from Art Germ and then an actual still from the movie, but it just didn't do that well, and it wasn't really good at all. And so it was a lot of effort, but I don't know if I really learned anything, but it's not something that I'm really happy with. Here's another random piece of me trying to draw Roxanne from the Goofy movie. I don't know why I did this. This was not very well received because it's pretty random from what I've been doing. I traced this random picture of an Asian girl and turned her into my own version of Raven, because I wanted to get in on that Raven, modern looking Raven drawing challenge that was out at that time. This is another commission I did. Again, I had to do why am I forgetting her name? That's not Raven. What did I say? That's not Raven, that's Starfire. This is Raven, that was Starfire. Okay, sorry about that. Here's another example of me. I don't know why I was doing this. Why was I doing these weird shark fin gill pinup girls, trying to accentuate the serratus, trying to study that? You know, I was a mess here. I was tracing this from an image, and then I decided to try to make it my own for this weird page that I had. But eventually, this right here marks the time where I pretty much stopped tracing. And this was an example of me realizing I didn't really need to trace anymore. So I was doing this trace, and I did this little sketch on the side, and I was like, oh, that's pretty good. So I was continuing my tracing, but I kept the sketch. I tried to add some more details, and I went back to the tracing, and then I kept working on this, and I was pretty happy with it. I'm like, oh, I got this cool little volleyball girl. And I don't know why, but I decided from then, not only was I not going to trace, but I was going to focus more on, you know, my style a little bit more. So all of these drawings I didn't trace. I was using reference and just having fun drawing quickly. This is a photo of one of my friends. She was working a camera rig, but I decided to make it this weird futuristic thing. And if you notice here, like when I draw a body, I get it right pretty quick. You know, I get the scale right. All the problem was that leg, and I get the form pretty quickly. And I don't really know anatomy that much at all. Here's another example. You know, I'll show you this just to be sure, because I've traced a lot, so I need to show you guys that I didn't trace 100% of the time. It was mostly like 50% of the time. But yeah, it's another one. I got it kind of good, and it went well. It was a random face that I drew. This is a friend of mine that I've drawn before, and she let me draw one of her drawings on her photos. And again, like I got the body done pretty fast. And if you'll notice, what I'm doing is I'm drawing the body before I draw the face, because faces were really, really difficult for me to get looking good at the time, and actually still. And I didn't really understand why until really, really recently. Here's another example. This was from a reference on Instagram. I drew those slight little curved lines, but eventually I got it right. You know, it looked pretty good. Everyone liked this. Of course, her torso is way too long. You know, why is this equal to that? It doesn't make sense, but, you know, it looks good. Everyone loved it when I posted it. So I kept doing that, but didn't really do so well because I started doing these things where I would take these really harsh lines and draw it as if I was meant to cell shade it. And this really wasn't something that people enjoyed watching or looking at. I got the whole body done. Again, perfect. I didn't really end up changing it much. But the face, look at that face, guys. Look at that face compared to after several minutes later, I figured out that was the face I wanted. And then I just fill in the details for the body. Like the body is just an afterthought. And I didn't really think about it, but I was a lot better at drawing bodies than I was at drawing faces, and I couldn't figure out why. This looks like something that you've seen before, and it actually is. This is me drawing kind of from memory that one tracing I did, and I did it without tracing it, I got the perspective down, and I started drawing it, and I changed it. I used a photo reference that was different, but it was very similar to that 3D model that I was tracing earlier. And, I added all the details, and I thought it was great, but people didn't really like it. I got less likes. I was sad. Here's one of someone from work. I was really nervous drawing someone in real life, so I didn't really go too far with that one. This is Engine Knight from Instagram, a great cosplayer. Just to prove it, did this all by myself, no tracing, and I got it to be pretty good. And then here's another one. I love this girl's photos. She has like the most intense photos that are really, really fun to draw. But I wasn't really doing too well on Instagram at this point. So I was like, all right, I'm getting less likes, so I need to change something. It was so stupid how I was so worried about likes. So at this point, here's another turning point. I decided, all right, I'm going to focus more on faces, and I'm going to focus more on being stylized. No more hyperrealism, no more full bodies. So I started it by studying Ross. And so I've already talked about this on my channel. I started studying Ross draws. So I would trace a drawing of his that I liked and then draw it. And I was very painstaking, but I felt like I grew a lot doing this because it taught me to see more style than copying things. I learned a little bit more about how to distill reality into a style that I appreciated. And so I started doing that. And so this began the pink sketches, where I would just sketch and focus on getting a good sketch without trying so hard to get it perfectly realistic. So this is a portrait of Lorna Keller art on Instagram. I made her into this, kawaii anime girl. And I was really happy with it. I didn't trace any of this stuff. It was great. I really felt fulfilled and happy with my work. So here's another example of me tracing Ross. And so I would study and I would trace his example, and I would try again. And then I would try again here, doing my own thing. I tried to do the body from my mind, which is pretty decent for no reference. And then eventually you'll see here that I just started having fun, It's really bad. Like the nose and the eye at some point are really weird, but I had been referencing Ross a little bit, enough to kind of get a feel for how his aesthetic is, and I kept working on it and I kept pushing it, and I was able to get to something that I really liked. And so I ended up doing that repeatedly, and I was really happy with these drawings. This one ended up looking like Taylor Swift, and I didn't even look at her at all for the reference. And here we go. Here's one where I went really far into the style. This was Boozette. There was a challenge to draw Boozette and Bowsette last year. This was something, Spend all this time here getting the skin right, but look at the hair, it's just nothing. But I really like this one. It's fun. This reminded me of the stuff that I used to do when I was using my first Wacom tablet, but that stuff has all been deleted. No one will ever see it. But yeah, these are some more portraits. I was really happy with this. I took a reference from Pinterest and I drew it. See how I just draw the head shape and then I get the whole body in, and then I struggle with the face. Look at that. Look at her eye. It's so bad. Look at her chin. And then I finally get the perspective right eventually. And then, I draw it and it looks cool. It's stylized. And I eventually printed that one out and inked it on paper, and everyone loved it. So I kept doing these things and mixing how deep I would stylize things, but I was again very influenced with Instagram and the likes I would get. And see here, I started experimenting with, okay, if I can't render or color stuff, maybe I can just do this like ink thing where I ink over the sketches because the sketches aren't good enough to get more likes. And yeah, it was bad. It was really unhealthy mindset. I really liked this sketch here. I accidentally did something in perspective that wasn't terrible. This was another one I really liked, a stylized. I was able to stylize and actually draw someone that was African American with culture, and was really happy with it. At this moment, I was super happy with this. I was able to be able. Actually, it wasn't even, the reference wasn't even. I think she was white in the reference, but I decided she just ended up with these proportions that were more Afrocentric, and I decided to just keep it that way. And here we go. This is just another Ahiago or Ahago thing that I did. I was really towing the line of this kind of art, and I don't know why I kept doing it for so long. This is a sketch of a model that I really like. I didn't even know her when I drew this. It wasn't until much later. This is another sketch I really like. I really like these just basic fun sketches with these really nice, enjoyable to look at line art, line quality. See how quickly I got the face anatomy to be right and the perspective and stuff. I had been drawing a lot here. That was the whole goal of all the pink sketches, to draw rapidly and quickly. But sometimes I would do a very bad job and they weren't really received well, like this one. It's really not that great in the face compared to the body, and this one was really bad. Like, her eyes are tiny and her nose is tiny and her face is so big, and the lines started losing that nice sculptural quality that they have in this one, for example. And people responded to that, and I was affected by the likes a lot. And so where I should have been continuing on this kind of path, looking back, I didn't. I redid my Sally drawing here for Halloween last year. So now we're in Halloween 2018, if you've been keeping up with the dates. This one didn't do well at all. Even though, I did improve a lot of things, I was still really, really not able to understand how to render faces properly in this style. And I was still really lazy, keeping too much of the line work. Here, these were pretty successful. I think it's because of the full body. People really enjoy that. And if I go back, and here we have, I don't know if you guys can guess by looking at her face, another e-girl. This is Belle Delphine that I decided to turn into this hot witch anime character. I don't know why I was doing this stuff when I was just messing around. I didn't really have a focus, and Sal's really struggling to make her face look a certain way. But you can see here again, I come back with that anatomy for the body, and the perspective is pretty decent. And that's all coming back from all the tracings that I did. And then I went and did the effort of actually looking up some clothing reference, and I did a pretty decent job with that. And even though this didn't do as well as I wanted, I'm still really proud of it. You can see here I did a sketch of another sketch of Gal Gadot in a more stylized fashion. And I started to get a little bit more depressed here again with my art performance. It wasn't really doing that well. This wasn't too bad, but I didn't like how much of a struggle it was, and I just didn't feel, this doesn't feel to the level I wanted it to be. This one did though. This was a drawing I did of Yuffie, and I don't know how I was able to do it. I liked sketching faces small at this time because I thought it helped me kind of trick my brain into thinking it wasn't a big deal. I wasn't sure if it was going to be Yuffie from the beginning, but I decided that it would be, and I just kept having fun, and I got the anatomy pretty decent, and, you know, I started detailing it. I used my own hand as a reference here. I really like how it looked. This is a piece that I'm still very happy with, but for some reason I got distracted with Instagram, and once I posted this was my attempt to draw Jack Skellington, and it didn't do well because I pushed myself a lot on that. I kind of wasn't sure. I just went back to drawing faces, and it was okay. It wasn't that bad. Again, none of these are traced anymore because I've gotten to that point where I felt pretty confident. I was extremely disappointed with when I posted this. This one did really, really badly, and I was just like, oh, okay, things are spiraling. And then I posted this one, which ended up being my profile picture. And it's a somewhat stylized rendered piece where I didn't have line work anymore. And it did extremely well. And just for the sake of it, you can see that I didn't trace it. Started out with a basic circle and my really shaky lines, but I eventually figured it out. And I did some more faces like this. Some were good, some were bad. Speaking of bad, this one was of my friend that recently got married, and this wasn't good at all. Like, her face is so flat, and that's what always happens when I tried color. So I again tried so much to stay away from it. This one was another piece that was disappointing because I tried to do this kind of Disney style, which was really, really fun. But, you know, the first comment was, this scared me. And then the next one was that she looks like she could be the Grinch's daughter. And so I ended up coming back to this a few days ago, and I was just like, why can I draw people smiling with their teeth showing and it doesn't look creepy? So I tried to fix it. I think I did a pretty good job. I moved the eyes and the nose. I changed the eyes. I changed the nose. Or I changed the nose back, and I changed the mouth a little bit. But yeah, things like that were really getting to me at that time. Doing some more weird anime sketches, like it's just a weird balance of realism and kind of this anime stylized effect that I was really learning from Ross Draws and Kufshinovilia and all of those guys. I really loved their artwork. I couldn't really find my own voice in it. Here's a commission I did. Another piece that was just a random Pinterest girl. This is a friend from work. And this was the second video that really took off, where I was studying Disney for a little bit. Drawing a few more faces here and there. This is Billie Eilish. Just kind of floating around at this point, not really sure of what I was doing with my artwork. This was a piece I was really proud of because I felt like for once the flow of everything and the style all were connected, and I didn't feel like I was mixing realism with style. Then I did this and it really wasn't that good. But these were all necessary to do. Then this is when I got 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. This piece really wasn't that good either. This style is weird. I get really distracted when I look at references sometimes. They don't allow me to go as stylized or go too realistic sometimes. This was the hit or miss girl. Really bad coloring again, and the eyes are just weird. This weird balance of realism with Disney. And then I drew this random model, full size, but full body, but then I have this face that doesn't even look good on her. It's just pretty proud of the skin rendering though. Here's another Pinterest one. This one was pretty good. This is from another subscriber and follower commission. Not really a commission, but I was doing like raffles on Patreon back then. Let's see. Here is a drawing. Oh, you can see I had 15,000 subscribers at this point. This is Stefani Justin. I did a video on this, I think. Oh, that was for another part. I think this was after I finished the video. But again, playing with the stylistic choices. I started doing some random stuff for like Redbubble. I was going to try and do some sales there. This is a drawing of another subscriber. I don't know why I reverted to a realism style where I was doing really intense lighting and value work, but I did it. It was all right. Then we have this one. This one is another random pinup. I was pretty happy with the color at the time. I liked how I got the reflections down. But again, it was this really messy kind of thing where I was going with realism and anime style and not really knowing and having control with what I'm doing. And my performance on Instagram was really suffering because of that. Tried to do a realistic version of Mercy. That's her name. All right. Here we go. That's a colored version of her. And here's another sketch that was weird. This didn't go well. I never finished it. This one was from a singer from Luna. One of the first K-pop stars that I drew after the tracing that I did. Here's another reference from a follower of mine. I really like this one. I deleted that video because it didn't get that many views. I'm really disappointed that I did that. I never deleted a video again after that. I just private them if they are bad. Working on a YouTube thumbnail here. I was referencing Natiri from Avatar to do this piece. This piece turned out great. I didn't know it was going to be that good. It was suggested by one of my mods on Discord, and yeah, she loved it and everyone else loved it, so I was really happy. This is another drawing of a guy from Pinterest. I was pretty happy with how I shaded it, but didn't do that well. I was really disappointed with my art overall during this time. Some more random sketches. I was doing some stuff for Amino, and so I was doing these like little tutorials. This one was really bad. The perspective on her is terrible. I didn't do it justice. This one did terribly. I think I archived that pretty quick. And then this was my practice for my most viewed video. So what I did was I created a diagram because I knew I was going to sit here for like 3 hours and draw her. And I wanted to make sure that the sketch phase, I didn't struggle too much. So I created an armature and tried to memorize it. And I tested it right next to it. And it worked. So I was like, all right, I'm ready to make the video. And I did. And it was great. Here's me again, randomly deciding to study some anatomy. I don't know why I did that. Here's a drawing of one of my subscribers' characters, and I was able to do it without, it was still wonky. I was really messing with the proportions because I wasn't used to drawing bodies. It's been a while, but I was pretty happy with it. I was able to draw the clothes and turned out really well. Again, being able to draw the body is much easier than the faces is a repeating thing. This is a face I did from my mind. Just I was pretty happy with it. This is always my default hairstyle because it's so easy to do. And then this was a Draw This in Your Style from Eric Anthony, I believe. I tried to color it using color blending modes, but it just looks bad. And this was one of my more successful realistic drawings going forward. I think at this point I'm going to mention about how YouTube really influenced my art, because YouTube made me aware about how much more the realism style is appreciated, and I started to go into that because of it. And it opened my eyes to how much it's appreciated on Instagram as well. Here's my attempt at doing a drawing with the skin was just terrible rendering. It's so flat, but the hair is pretty decent. So I really liked it. Here's another K-pop star, I believe. I'm not sure. I think she's just a model. This one wasn't that great, but I think the colors and the lighting made people really like it. And the fact that she was kind of famous and she's Asian and all that combined ended up making it the most liked picture I have on my Instagram. I don't know how that happened. It has like 17,000 likes. But yeah, that was crazy. I really don't get it. This is my failed drawing of Michelle Obama. This is terrible. I'm not Michelle Obama. One of Obama's daughters. I can't remember her name. And this is another Pinterest girl. I liked how I shaded the skin here. I learned a lot from that piece. Another Pinterest girl. Just ended up going crazy because I didn't like it. This was my attempt at doing this really nice portrait of Daenerys Targaryen from the Game of Thrones and ice. It was alright. I mean, it didn't do that well again, so I was like, it's always a hit when you do things that are expected to do very well, but they don't. I'm always so frustrated with like, should I zoom in? Should that be the first picture? Should I zoom out? It's just a headache. This is another one. This one was fun because I traced it because I wanted to see if I could create a face from two faces. So if you look at the layers, I got Billie Eilish, and then I got this girl, and I combined their faces. You can't really see the original, but I combined their faces into one, and I thought it was really cool. And I thought I was going to try and do that more often, but I didn't really get around to it. This is Black Widow from Avengers Endgame. And the funny thing is, I didn't watch Avengers Endgame before I drew that, so that was really funny. And then this is the final piece for that Pinterest girl drawing I did. I really love how the hair came out and the skin. The skin actually looks like it has some depth to it for once. And here's my attempt to draw Jimin from BTS. Didn't look like him at all. Another random sketch. This was supposed to be Rihanna. And then this is Melisande from Game of Thrones. Really happy with this one. Started getting into this sketch and then render your sketch lines kind of phase, which I really liked. Let's go show the time-lapse replay. Yep. That's how I did my sketches now. No more tracing. And then we have some contests that I did. Another piece. This was from an Instagram model. Just messing around, not really serious. Here's a piece I had a lot of fun with. I don't know why I ended up deciding to do all this crazy stuff, but sometimes when something's good, you just keep working on it and you keep trying and you keep trying, and it just ends up looking amazing. And I'm really happy with that. Billie Eilish inspired with that blood stuff coming out of her face. This was a piece that wasn't received very well because of its weird anatomy and the style, which was kind of a hit because I was like, damn, people really are serious about things being realistic. And so I did some more K-pop stuff. I think this is Lisa from Blackpink. People really liked it. I really like the hair. I think this is one of my most successful colored hair drawings that I've done. This one was really mediocre. It was a pretty sorry attempt at drawing something and then trying to color it, but I just had those harsh lines in there. And so, yeah, I think at this point you all recognize these artworks that I've done because it's pretty recent. But one thing that I do want to say is that if you made it to the end of this video, you kind of get to find out about what I plan to do with my art now in the future. So I've been doing these studies of Elsa. I've been tracing Elsa and trying to get a feel for the proportions of her face, because I've realized that I really need to get back to my old passion for drawing characters. I wanted to make characters so much in the past, but I kind of got distracted because I thought, okay, I'm nowhere near close enough to be able to draw the body, so let me focus on the faces. That's what people like. Let me do something that I can do well now, get really good at, so it can help me make some money to fund my own art career, all that stuff. But I've just been really unfulfilled doing that. And I thought I would get to that doing sketching. I thought I would get to that by doing some traditional stuff. I got all these, art supplies, and I thought that would help, but it really didn't. This past week, I realized that it's just the way I've been doing things, trying to do these super realistic drawings. It just isn't fulfilling because I don't feel like I own it. So I've been doing these sketches. I've been studying Elsa, and I redrew one of my first digital art OCs. And I really love this, and I did this pretty quickly. I'm studying anatomy a lot at the same time. I'm focusing on the neck and the shoulders right now, a little bit of the torso. Really happy with, again, I found that I'm sketching these bodies so quickly, and the faces are coming along too, because I'm not really focused on being photorealistic. If you look at my sketch account, you'll see that these faces don't look anything like the reference, because I'm allowing myself to be free and to draw from my mind a little bit. And it makes sense, you can't remember all the details in a face, especially because of how we store faces in our brain. As human beings, we have to remember so many people. So when we remember a face, it's stored differently than when we remember what someone's hand looked like. So of course I'm going to have so much trouble drawing faces. And of course it makes sense to be able to draw characters from your mind. You're not going to draw their faces super hyper realistically. And so, I kind of gave up on doing that. It's something that I still will do, but it's not going to be my bread and butter anymore. And with this, I'm also going to try my best to start adding some more backgrounds and stuff like that. But yeah, that's really where I want to go in the future. I'm not really interested in these kind of weird, wonky pieces anymore, like with the trying so hard to replicate reality in this weird way. I want to own something. I get so much more passion, so much more satisfaction out of doing these kind of sketches where, the anatomy makes sense and it all flows well and it works with the stylized face that I have, and I'm able to experiment with emotions. I came up with this tired emotion by myself. She didn't look like this at all in the reference, and when I flip it horizontally, I'm still happy with it, and I'm like, wow, I drew a face that looks good, the body looks good, and I'm proud of it. I would love to detail this out and have a bedroom scene and, post that on Instagram. And so I can't wait for that future. I can't wait to see what the future holds in store for me and my artwork. And I know there's going to be a lot of people who aren't about it, who aren't down with this new style on YouTube and Instagram, but, it's just what makes me happy. I remember doing this drawing and it did okay, but then when I posted the realistic Zima blue one, it did way better. And so looking back, I'm way more proud of myself for doing this interesting perspective and, adding the gun in there and the face. But in the hands, I never studied hands and I can draw them so well. It's just something that I've realized drawing faces super realistically is always going to be a pain, and it's not going to be fulfilling to me as an artist. And if I keep trying to combine those two loves together, it's not going to end up well for me. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate you if you watch this whole thing. It's been difficult. I never talk this much and my throat feels like it's going to shrink and just disappear. But I hope to see you with some really cool new artwork next week. Really excited because I'm going to really try to, I'm hitting anatomy hard. I'm going to study color in a different way. I'm just going to start picking from photos now to study, give myself a good background, because so far studying from photos has proven effective for me. So I'm going to do that for colors, at least to get started. If it's not the right way, I don't really care, but it's going to be what I do to begin. And I'll keep you guys up to date if it helps me out, and share with you what I do learn in my own unique way, which I know is pretty damn good because I'm good at explaining stuff because I'm not that smart. But yeah, I'm just rambling now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.